Okay, hello, back again on the stream, and as you can see today I'm experimenting with a second camera showing my keyboard. I don't know exactly why you want to see my keyboard, but I figured I would play around a little bit with a second camera anyway, so I didn't have anything else to put it on than my keyboard. Okay, so I'm a little lost this morning. I just need some time to get up to speed. Okay, so today my plan is let us first see that we see the right thing. We don't. We see the wrong browser here. Let me fix that. Change browser to this one. Hello. Stupid obs, got completely wrong browser now. Hello. Okay, some startup mistakes. Okay, so this is my browser, and now I have my Emacs and terminal screen up. Okay, and today I put this little working on text onto the screen, so just that the people showing up won't have to ask me all the time what I'm doing. So yeah, here we are. Just going to get into this. So I have here my code, MQTT code, the terminal, the chat window and everything. So today I'm going to take a look at some of my initial mistakes I did in the MQTT implementation. Actually, I merged it the other day, the first PR. I don't remember exactly the PR number, 5173. So now, since a few days back, curl can speak. If you build it with the right command line options, you get the MQTT support into curl. That's all fine. Well, it is pretty good, but it turned out that I did some silly mistakes, of course, in the MQTT protocol handling things. So I'm going to start out now by addressing some of them. They're really protocol related, MQTT protocol related things. And I got some good emails, good email in particular that I'm thinking of right now that pointed out. It came from Christoph Cray on the mailing list, and he pointed out some flaws in the protocol state machine that I wanted to fix because they're really making it sort of, it does the wrong thing in the MQTT protocol handling. So I'm going to start out with doing a little, let's do like this. I have so MQTT to do, just a little file here, what's here for me to fix. So he said this. So we need to support publish before we get a sub-ack back. Well, he said two other things too. I'll paste them in here too. That's related to the same thing. Currently we wait for a sub-ack first, and we need to check failure in the sub-ack. And he also said something else. Well, he said two other things that I'm going to paste here, but they're going to be secondary. First, of course, that I made the server, the broker in you can see my hand here going to the other camera there. Woo! He said basically that the broker doesn't actually send disconnect the way we do, or my test server does. And I pretty much knew that, but I still made it work like that just for simplicity, to have something to start out with. Which I think, I mean, it got me going. There will be more MQTT things to fix, as MQTT is really a mysterious protocol to me, so I'm learning as I go ahead here. So I'm sure there will be more mistakes like this. Good morning, Joran. Oh, there's Christoph. Hi. Thank you for your feedback. I'm going to address at least some of that today, hopefully, unless I run into some too difficult stuff. So, first I'm going to fix my protocol handler by... I actually thought of another thing too. I will add another on my own here. The add test case for partial MQTT retrieval. So when that's how you spell it. So when the TCP connection gets cut off in the middle, I just want to make sure that curl detects that and reports the error correctly. So I need to write a test case for it. I think the code, the client code acts correctly there, but I still want to verify it with a test case. I've done some quick and HTTP3 work previously, live streamed. Today this is going to be MQTT. I don't have any... Well, actually, there are outstanding HTTP3 work to do. If we look at my currently open curl issues, we have, I think, yeah, 2 of them are marked HTTP3 related, but they're actually quick or HTTP3 related. So there are definitely HTTP3 things to fix, but I'm not going to do that right now. But if you want to have some fun to work with in curl, you can certainly dig in and work on HTTP3 and quick things. Actually, there are more HTTP3 things to do. These are just those that are mentioned in the issues. I'm sure we have some other mentioned in the wiki page as well. Still doesn't work. Yeah, so there are more. And might be even more. There's an alt service bug somewhere that is also HTTP3 related, I think. So yes, or at least involves HTTP3. I don't know how it handles retained messages. That seems like a MQTT question that I'm not sure of. I mean, right now curl only does subscribe to a topic is the name. So I don't know what happens if that is already available. I don't know. That's MQTT details I haven't learned yet. There's so much to... That's basically everything about MQTT I need to learn because I don't know it. So okay, back into the this one. Where am I? Trying to get the correct scene here. So yes, if you're looking for stuff to work on in curl, there's a lot of things. We have a lot of open issues. There are a lot of to-dos. There's a bunch of things in quick and HTTP3 land to grab because we're still early days there. Curl supports H3 draft 27 really good, so you can try it out and you can do it. You can actually get Facebook and a lot of Cloudflare stuff with it, but there's more to fix and there are some bugs on it. but now MQTT. So first I wanted to highlight this. The server may start a publish before we get a sub-ACK, which I guess it's your Mark's question. So we can get a publish before we get a, it's basically, I guess, if we have something pending. I don't know exactly how that would happen. Right. Right. So basically you don't ever. So you need to. Well, never mind. Now I'll start out with. I'm gonna make sure that we get a test case up that sends a publish before a sub-ACK. And this is if you saw my previous streams on the MQTT work, you saw me use an earlier version of the test cases, or write the earlier version, and I then subsequently modified how I write the tests a little bit, and how the protocol part looks like when I verify the protocol. So I think they now look a little more decent, so that the server now outputs lines like this that shows the protocol as it has gotten it and has sent it to the client. So it says client sent this instruction, this is the remaining length in hexadecimal, and that's the entire chunk of data that arrived. And the servers then sent a connack, that the remaining length, and so on. So it actually, compared to with what I started, it's actually slightly more readable. The protocol is still entirely hexadecimal, or sorry, it's actually binary, and it shows it in hexadecimal. So if you know your MQTT, it starts to get readable like this. So you can at least see what kind of message it is and the remaining length, and then, yeah, you need to know quite a lot of protocol details to read the rest, but still. So in my case, fixing this first little thing, there might be a publish before the sub-ACK. So I want to write a test case then that just reverses the order of the publish and the sub-ACK. And again, the server won't do disconnect, but I'll let it do a disconnect for now anyway, so that I have a fine point in time where it actually stops. So I'm going to have to go back and fix that soon anyway, one thing at a time. So I'm going to do a new test case, 1190. Let's see what I have available. The test case numbers are just arbitrarily, but they have to be unique. So I can't just override whatever I want. So 1194 is going to be my new test case, and this is going to look like this. Test 1194, and subscribe with publish before sub-ACK. Use an MQTT lib for what? I'm going to use a MQTT lib for libcurl going forward. When I add more fancy features, I'm going to add a lib library for it. But my the point with I can't really use a library for the server parts anyway, because I want to make sure that the server is really, or broker, as they say in MQTT land, is really stupid, and I can control it completely and make it send broken things and partial things and whatever. So I can't use a library in the server end, and in the client end, I'm basically doing a very simple implementation without a library now, and I'm going to introduce a library soon when I go into more fancy MQTT features. So I'm thinking going a conditional build, right? So if you're fine with the really dead simple MQTT curl, you can basically go with my native implementation, and then I'm going to add more authentication and QoS and stuff. I'm going to switch to a library for that. That's at least my current thinking. We'll see if that holds down the line. So there, I'll just switch the order of the publish and the sub-ACK. So this is, as I understand it, then supposed to be a valid behavior for the server. Oh, sorry, I'm stupid. I'm changing the protocol part. That's what happens. I need to insert some instruction somewhere that tells the server to do it like this. Here's the server code. Not pub-ACK, sub-ACK. And it makes a sub-ACK, then the publish. And I need to do it in the reversed order for this test. Okay. So we have this system in the test cases, and this is back in curl test suites functionality. It's a really fun thing, but you can do it like this, or I can do it like this. So in the test case, within the client tag, I can actually, no, it's in the server. Where is it? It's in the reply. I wrote this, but I still have to merging some of my SQL-C API. Why would you add MySQL-C API to libcurl? Why not just use it separately? So the server command is a generic way from test cases to send instructions to the server, and the instructions are then server specific depending on what server the test runs. So in this case, it would be server commands sent to the MQTT server to do whatever, and the instructions can be really specific, and we invent our own specific instructions. So in this case, we will have an instruction that says send publish before whichever function, before the sub-ACK. Like this, pub before publish before sub-ACK. A long instruction, but it says something maybe. Let's see if I have some code already for this. I believe I server command Okay, so when the run tests is the main test script starter, and it starts MQTT D somewhere. There it says it passes on this config option to the to the file name that gets the instructions, the server command instructions. That's the config file. So in the here, that's the config file. So it actually gets the config. That's the name it'll read the data from. And here it reads the data. It supposedly has a version that it reads, but we don't care about the version. .31 bytes. Key seems like I invented a much longer one, right? 1194. No, 21 bytes. So if this is publish before subac, then okay, we set a little option here, config reset defaults it did before. I think I can become a Twitch affiliate. I mean, I think I have that option because I think I have the all conditions sort of fulfilled or met. But I haven't completed it because I don't know. I got stuck on some forms and pages and stuff, so I never completed that. So I might do that at some point. I don't know. Config, I need to extend the struct here. And I want to make sure that there's a boolean. And darn it, it was hard to remember that name. Pub before publish before subac. And it's a boolean, so if it's true, otherwise it's false. Publish config publish before subac true. I can't spell. Okay, and reset defaults here. It needs to reset it to false. Does it build? So yeah, when I build a single core, it takes a little while, but it's, yeah, it builds at least. Okay, that's step one. Then step two is to subac. So step two is here. I got the subscribe. We know that, but look at that. I need to do it like this. So yeah, I'm going to just revert. So the thing is that I'm getting the test number out of the topic that we subscribe to. So if you can see here, we get a subscribe, and I figure out the test number from the topic, and the topic. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. So I need to read the test number so that I can do this. I open the test case, and it's only after here I know if that publish before subac is true or not. So I can't do the subac until after this point. So yeah, so I'm going to do like this. Maybe I should do this in a nicer way somehow. But okay, I'm going to move it there. So this should not change any behavior. So I'm just going to make sure that my original 1190 use case, this is the simple version mismatch. Look at that, I've upgraded to a newer automake. Yeah, I upgraded my Debian unstable, so I should maybe do this to avoid that warning. Automake 1.16.2. Oh, I wonder if this is going to cause other problems. Fun, but why not do all the problems live on the stream, right? So I have a save configure line. It actually looks like this. And this morning I figured I would try out Clang 10 more. So I actually forced using Clang 10 when I build. There's also a GCC 10 now. So I actually tried it also, but there's no visible difference to me. Neither found any new warnings or complaints or anything. I'm not sure exactly if, of any particular differences that matters to curl. But okay, let's try out Clang 10 today. And my standard build here just picks a bunch of build options that I think is fine to work with on a daily basis. So yeah, all of the protocols, lots of features. I enable 2 experimental features, and then I build everything. And if you can see it now, the file names are actually in alphabetical order per directory. Okay, so this builds, and now I then rebuild the test directory again. That's because a lot of that is built static now in my dev builds. So a lot of these library builds actually build with a static library, so it has to relink everything. So okay, Oh. See, it takes longer time to build the test stuff than build code stuff. 1190, no warning, works. And 1194, which is the new one, is not supposed to work, right? Bam. It doesn't, because it wants the protocol in the other order, but it doesn't get it in the other order because it still sits in the same order. So here's my fix for that. If config, right? If config.publish before subac. If not config, then we go do the regular thing. And then we do the publish, and if we do publish, otherwise we do it in the other order. So this is a test server, it's allowed to be stupid. 1194, and now I think the server might do it right now, but now I think the client is going all confused because it doesn't allow this. So what does client curl do here? I'm not sure it did the right thing, did it? Get config. Yeah, it wants 2 arguments on the line, it only got 1. True. Doesn't really matter. Just want to make sure that it gets 2 arguments. Okay, 1194. So this trace file is what is generated by the test suite. It's an output, a trace output from when I run this run test 1194. It actually creates this command line. Boom. And one of the options is this trace log trace blah blah blah. So it logs its verbose output in this trace file, and that's what I'm looking at. So I'm trying to understand why it doesn't return an error. But I think the server is still not doing the right thing. I need to see, there's a, yeah, so this is sort of my regular way of debugging the test cases. I read all the logs after I run the test to make sure that everyone agrees on what it did and how it behaved. It's okay. Subscribe, found, wrote. It still said sub-ack before publish, which is wrong. It should say publish before sub-ack. That's what I wanted it to do. Right, and it should log this, publish before sub-ack, but it didn't do that. And it should do that after found test case number 1194, then it should read that. Oh wait. Get config. Get config. I need to get the config for each test so that I get a fresh value. So what happens now? Bed. Still looks wrong, right? What does it say? Found test number, reset to defaults. Oh, it said that, but then it means that at least it reset to defaults. It didn't say parse config file, so it didn't find the no config file to read. So add some more logging to this so that I understand what happens. Okay, start again. I started out really slow on this journey, but okay, these are all steps I need to figure out anyway. found no config file log FTP server command to read. So okay. So did I mess up the formatting here? Server command is maybe not in the client. Where to read file format. Server command is within the reply tag, so I put it in the wrong place. So yes, it's up here because it instructs how to reply. I guess that's the idea. What happens now? Something else happened. It got the publish before the sub-ACK. It might be the right thing. Trying to see what the differences are. Why they look the same, right? Log server input. This is what the server logs then about the conversation. So it gets a connect, it does a connect, it gets a subscribe, it makes a publish, and then a sub-ACK, and then a disconnect. It looks like the right order for this test case, the way I wanted it to be. So it's a connect, a connect, a subscribe, a publish, a sub-ACK, and a disconnect. Yep. That seems correct, but check generated. That's what we generated. Check expected is what it expected. Yeah, the publish is different. And that, oh right, and the subscribe is different too, because it'll subscribe to 1194 instead of 1190. So the subscribe here is, yeah, here's the hexadecimal reading, but 34 is the number 4, right? So boom, there's only one. So now this is also, this has a topic in the publish, which is that one. Bam. Yep. That took me basically 40 minutes to fix the test case. But anyway, that's good invested time. Now I'm pretty sure we will see that curl got all confused. Yeah, that's why it says like this. Curl returned 8 when it expected 0. So it returned an error there. Which happens because it isn't okay for curl or yet to do the protocolling like that, which is state machine error. Wrong MQTT. I'm going to MQTT. And this is, as people tend to ask me, this is an Emacs in this window over here. And wait a minute, it's a little bit too wide. I'm going to... it is a Emacs window, and it's not a terminal window. It is a graphical Emacs window. But I've removed all the cruft, so there's no menu, there's no toolbar, there's nothing in its way. I'm an Emacs user, but I use all the keyboard bindings. I don't use any menus or toolbars or anything. So that's why it looks similar to Emacs in a terminal. But it's Emacs in an X window. The difference then, of course, is marginal. But still, there's actually like a scroll bar and stuff like that. That's not available if you run it in a terminal. Okay, back to the state machine. So, so the read, I think this is the read publish. Here's pretty much the state machine for doing for handling incoming MQTT from, I think I'll call it a server still, because in our world it's still a server. They call it a broker in MQTT. So terminal emulator in the GUI, of course it is. I can still also do like this. I can fire up a shell in my Emacs anyway, so I can do like this. So I can still run a shell within my Emacs. So it's sort of, yeah, I can do whatever. And I also often run my build from within Emacs. Like this. Ba-doom. Okay. Hello. Now back to my task at hand. MQTT. Here's the incoming state machine. Check the trace again. Receive header. Yeah, that's the publish, right? So set a breakpoint on this line I'm looking at here, 529, run it, and then I do like this, and it says sub ACK, but that's going to have to change, right? So oh, I better put a breakpoint back on that line. MQTT 515, so I'll continue back to that, and now the state is, we can go with a fancy window GDB to visualize it better and verify sub ACK, but it's not a sub ACK here because I changed the order. So now it'll read this, it'll work, but read buff 0 is 30 hex. So yes, it'll return weird error, weird server reply. Yeah. So I find it weird that it can send publish before it has verified this subscribe, but okay. I'll just accept that fact. So basically sub ACK shouldn't be a state. It needs to accept publish or to change the way. If you see gremlins behind me, it's because my kids walk back and forth behind me to their rooms over there. I changed the way I did MQTT handling in the server after my previous episode because I did it so naively. I still do it naively in the client. I probably need to change it so that I make a generic yeah, pretty much work in my hallway. That's, well, there's actually on the upper floor in my house, so actually I have bedrooms. I have 3 bedrooms around me, but yes, it's in the middle. It's between all the bedrooms. That's the only room left for me. but also, I'm used to working from home. I've been doing it for over 6 years now, but I'm not used to having my entire family in my house while working from home. So it's a bit of a different time these days. Yeah, so I think I'm going to make it more of a generic. Read the MQTT header. Make it a more generic state machine, maybe, to handle things in a more. Because this state machine is pretty much assumes a certain order of events. Maybe I can do that. Yeah, the times are a bit exceptional. They are, but it's actually I'm not complaining. It works really good. It doesn't matter if they walk back and forth. I usually have my headphones on and I'm totally isolated from the rest of the house anyway when I'm working. So it doesn't bother me that much. It's good to have company when I'm eating lunch. So all in all, it's I'm doing fine. So I should probably then instead check. Exactly, yeah. When I go completely silent and sit here, scratch my head and look into a problem that you probably not at all are getting, then you at least get some live entertainment by some random people walking by in the background. So yeah, that's I should have animated animals or whatever to make sure that things are always happening. And at least I now have, you can see my keyboard, so at least when I go silent, you can see my hands moving, or so I don't know where to put them or do whatever. It's okay. I did. It should actually then do either. Trying to make up my mind how to do this. So MQTT basically sends every message with a fixed start of the packet, which is 1 byte of pretty much what the message is. It's actually more like 4 bits what the message is, and then 4 bits with some other info, and then it adds a length of the rest of the packet called the remaining length. Well, my kids are a bit random, so I wouldn't, yeah, let's call them random people. My kids and my wife. So the MQTT starts off with that 1 byte and then at least 1 more byte and then possibly a few more bytes depending on if it's a huge package or not. So that's all packages start like that. So it probably makes sense to have a generic parser for at least that initial little piece of MQTT header. But it also opens up for more complication. So where do I go? Sometimes it's actually harder for me to think properly when I do my live streams, probably because I can't stop talking. So you have something to listen to, and then I think slower, so I have a harder time to make up my mind on how to do things. So I'm probably appearing a little bit more thick than usual on this stream. I mean, than I am in real life when I'm not streaming, but it doesn't matter. I'll do it like this. So I'm going to think I need I don't post it really that much in advance. I usually post about it on Twitter before I do a stream, and I try to update the info page on Twitch for the channel homepage on the Twitch thing, which I'm sure pretty much nobody ever reads. But otherwise, I don't I don't have really a fixed schedule. I'm trying to make sure that when I'm actually streaming, I have a pretty good fixed task or good. I have made up my mind on what I want to work on, so that I have something to actually dive into and work on properly for at least an hour, maybe 3. So that's so I kind of come up with my streaming schedule more of ad hoc. Oh, I want to work on this tomorrow. I'll do a stream. Or maybe not, or maybe I need to do something else. So they're usually come up with a plan very late, and let's do a stream. So it's if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see that I'll announce it. If I'm good, I do it a day or two in advance. Otherwise, it's a bit it's hard. And I try to. This is actually not one of the open issues on GitHub. It should be an open issue on GitHub. But I'm going to shortcut the issue and make a pull request out of it once I get somewhere. That's why it says working on improving MQTT on the screen, because this is actually fixing MQTT issues. I can show you actually. So if you read the libcurl mailing list, which is an awesome mailing list, you can actually read. Where is it? I think it's this email from Christoph Cray here on some of the problems with my initial implementation, or I shouldn't say initial, I should say with the code as it looks right now. I was pretty well aware that I possibly did mistakes like this. So this post details some of the flaws in the current code, and I'm going to work on fixing them. So this is my attempt to fix those, or at least one by one. So now I'm going to change how I read that initial. I'm going to make a generic read the first byte and then the remaining length field, instead of doing it spread out the way we do it now, I think. So I have this verify sub back. Oh, and I do that mistake every once in a while. I've already switched to editing code. There we are. Too many buttons and mouse. Okay, so what, have you missed my excellent blog post on this subject? I blogged about it yesterday. Curl is not removing. FTP. There it is. Actually, it looks like this more. Anyway, that's a side issue. No, curl is not removing support for any protocol anytime soon, I imagine. So I'm going to change things around. Doing. I'm thinking. So, but it could also be noted that neither Chrome nor Firefox they're actually not removing FTP right now, right? Since their deprecation efforts have halted now during the pandemic, so it's not going to happen until later for real. And anyway, nobody's using FTP with browsers these days, so that's why they remove it, right? They wouldn't remove it if the usage level was above a certain percentage, and now they're sort of determined that only 0.0 and something % of users are actually using FTP, so they can remove it without users going nuts. But in curl's case, we actually have almost 30% of users saying that they used FTP, curl with FTP within the recent years. So I think we have I mean, that's what people say, not what we measure. The browsers measure, we ask, and so it's not exactly the same, but I'd still say that legacy protocols are still used quite a lot by curl users, so it's certainly not going to remove a protocol that 30% of the users say they've used within the last 2 years. I'm still sort of trying to make up my mind on how to do this. So I can switch to a generic header parser, but I don't want to. The thing is, I don't want to have a generic content path handling the content generically, because I want to make sure that when I read a big publish, I want to do it in a streaming manner. I don't want to read everything into memory or anything. So if a broker would publish, megabytes of data to curl, it would read it in a streaming manner and just get a little piece and pass it to the right callback, so that we wouldn't have to keep it in the memory. So okay, let me go back again to reconsider my thinking. So we do a publish, and we actually then switch to the, no, we do a subscribe. That's what we do. And in the subscribe, we go here, we go to the sub-ack state, but sub-ack could then get a publish already. When expecting a sub-ack, we might get a publish. So we need to read less than this. initially. We start out by reading 2 bytes. And we're not doing this correctly either. Okay, let's ignore that for now. Because if it actually returns again here, again, we should not fail. Okay. Yeah, but there are many protocols, right? And all the protocols have different pros and cons. And if SCP, for example, yeah, that's a cool protocol, but you'll have portability issues since you can't easily SCP for across platforms, especially not if you're running Windows somewhere. And that's because SCP is a funny. I mean, I like SCP. I use SCP a lot myself, but it's weirdly specified, and it basically invokes SCP in the other end. So it really requires that you have SCP on the other end as well, which in for example, doing cross like Linux to Windows, it's a messy situation. So therefore, SFTP is a better portability. It has a greater chance of working across platforms, but SFTP has other issues. For example, it's much harder to make SFTP perform well. So yeah, it's much easier to make FTP perform properly. But then FTP, doing FTP securely with FTPS has its own share of problems. So they're all complicated in different ways. So I'm reading the first 2 bytes. No, SCP doesn't use SSL at all. SCP is an SSH-based protocol, so it opens a channel over SSL, or I would say through SSH. But it invokes SCP in the other end, and it sort of pipes through data from SCP in one end to SCP in the other end. I'm pretending to be maintainer of libSSH2 as well, so I have some experience of SSH-based stuff. Yeah, that's so you know that's the convenient part with SCP is that it's basically pure SSH, but it's pure SSH passed over to the SCP in the other end. So that's what makes it easy, but also hard, so that you can't really. It's not a portable way. It's not a standard way to do transfers over SCP or over SSH. The standard way to do SSH-based transfers is really SFTP, and then SFTP never became a real proper RFC. There are a bunch of different drafts, and different implementations have implemented different drafts. So there's a variety or a grayscale of level of implementation of SFTP. And SFTP is really more of a file system style protocol over SSH. So you send blocks of data, this long into the file, this many bytes into the file, read this block, and you have to ACK each block over SSH. So send this block, ACK, I got it, send next block, send next block, send next block. And that's really complicated if you do block, 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 and you have a long round trip to the server. So you have to send this block, and if you wait for that block to arrive until you ask for the next block, you have a long round trip back and forth, and you can't do very big blocks either. So you have to, to implement SFTP really high performance, you need to ask for a lot of blocks, send this block, 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 blocks, and then the server will send all those blocks, and it's So, and if you don't know how big the file is beforehand, you have to sort of hope that the file is big enough, and you just pre-read ahead of time. Yeah, it's complicated. So SFTP is completely, utterly very different than FTPS. They're night and day. They don't have, well, apart from the letters in the names, they're very, very different. FTPS is FTP over TLS, right? So you add TLS on a regular FTP, but that has its own share of problems, because FTP uses two connections, and when you encrypt the connections, the firewalls and whatever in between can't read the responses and stuff, so it doesn't know when you open a new connection. So firewalls usually make it harder to do FTPS, and SFTP then is over SSH, and yeah, they're very, very, very different. Hi, Frank. Jesus, I'm slow here. I'm sort of still can't make up my mind exactly how to do this. I'm reading the two first bytes. I shouldn't do that. I should read one byte. One byte. Maybe. Or I can do it the other way around. And make sure that the publish one can handle a sub-ACK as well. I think that's now my choice of doing it like this. So read publish. That in a temp buffer for now, and then so okay, well, if I'm in so if we're in MQTT sub-ACK state or sub-wait state, we do the same thing. We read that byte. Excellent. And depending on what's in that byte, we are expecting a publish message. So if it's or sub-ACK, we know right now it's, I don't know which way I type. It's sort of, more of a, I'm sort of slowly working my way through this, because I have to make up my mind how to do this, and I haven't really done it, so I'm sort of trying out a few different things, and we'll see what sticks in the end. So it checks here if not, right, and this is if it's the first byte. But it will be the first byte, otherwise it'll change state, right? So I will read just figure out what packet it is by reading the first byte and ending off the correct bits, which are the 4 top bits. And if it's not published, it might be a disconnect. Then we do that. I need to I feel I need to re-up my cup of coffee soon, but first let's get somewhere. So this is C89 or C90, so we need to in all the variables at top. If ACK can do that. No. So if it's not sub-ACK, it could be disconnect, and we do that. If it's not, we don't understand it at all. Actually waiting for publish, right? So we could okay, so it reads the first byte. If it's publish, we move on like before. If it's sub-ACK, we need to handle the sub-ACK like we did in my fine. Yep, then we need a new state. Because we might not be able to read the entire thing right now, so we need to remember that we're in the state so that we can read the rest of the data knowing that it's a sub-ACK. So thing, but maybe I'll do this for now at least. I'm going to. So if we read that there's a sub-ack coming when we wanted to publish, we go up here, case MQTT sub-ack coming. I can't spell there. And within this state, I get that question sometimes if I figured out when it was actually going to be huge. I never realized, but at some point I realized that it already was fairly well used. And I can't say that there wasn't any sort of particular moment in time when I started. What does huge mean, or big, or well used? There's no particular threshold, or nobody said ding and told me, "Wow, it's big now." How do you determine that, and how do you do that judgment? So it wasn't any. I don't have any date marked in my calendar when that's the day I realized it was big, because it's all it's all just grades. So yeah, I've always realized since I started that more and more people are using curl. So because it's always been popular, and I've always had a lot of people using it and telling me that they like it. And we always had that trend of going more and more and more and more. But at some point in time, of course, I realized that a lot of people are using it. I think I like to mention that at one point there was this billboard in Silicon Valley that actually showed a curl command line, and maybe that was the point in time. I think it was 2012 that actually is then sort of, that is cool, having your product on a billboard in Silicon Valley. Maybe that was a sign that it actually was big, but I didn't really take it like that at the time. That was more like fun, cool, and now let's get back to fix bugs. I don't understand what I would need a tool to do for my state machine working. I don't think I have a problem to write a state machine. It's not the state machine that's the problem. It's more like my logic in my brain trying to make sure that I do the right thing in the right state and I handle the data correctly that is incoming. So no, I don't need help to write the state. Well, I need someone to write the code for the state machine, but all right, yeah, there it is. And I got that photo from a friend of mine, and unfortunately it's a really low quality, crappy photo, but it's a good one. So it's this one. This is apparently, I don't remember. Yeah, one of my favorites. That's the command line that they show here on the billboard. Curl Tech Jobs San Fran. So completely made up command line that doesn't mean anything at all. It's just and this, don't tell my boss. So I like it, and when I blogged about it, maybe even a better sign of being big at this time. So I blogged about it here on my blog at the time, almost, well, soon 8 years ago, and I got a response from the marketing director from dice.com. And he wrote, "We are deeply embarrassed by this mistake." I was sort of, yay, I think that's, I put the silver lining on that billboard when the marketing director of the campaign was deeply embarrassed by the sort of the silliness of that command line itself. But still, never mind. I actually didn't I mean, I don't care. I don't care about the particular, even if it was a nonsense command line. It wouldn't have mattered because people wouldn't, you know, nobody would actually enter that command line anywhere anyway. So I just thought it was fun that it actually used curl. My spare time hobby project on a billboard in Silicon Valley, sort of, and assuming that enough number of people actually knew what it was to make it a thing to put there. So that was cool. And also, right, as I mentioned in the blog post, that comment here is a C++ / don't tell my boss comment. It's really weird because that's $sign is a sign of a shell prompt, right? And why would you do the / thing here? Yeah, they should. I don't think they had any quality assurance at all in that marketing department. They just thought this looked hacker cool. Exactly. They probably asked around in the marketing department, hey, does this look like cool code? Sure, go ahead, everyone. Push, publish. I don't think marketing departments have Q&A departments. I don't know. Who knows? That was fun. And talking about, I think they have the NASDAQ one. I think this is actually an even better picture of curl in the wild. This is more of a high-res picture too. This is the NASDAQ building with the curl command line on the building, on the pretty big display in New York. And in this case, it's actually an advertising campaign for this company. I don't remember. Is it APIallthethings.com? And you could actually order a T-shirt with that command line back then. I had a friend that tried it and it worked, so I know that even better. But this was much later, right? This was in 2015. Okay, I'm back to my little state thing. Did it have dash capital X? It did, yes. I didn't even think about it. I sort of gotten tired about the capital X thing. Back to my code. At least that command line worked, so even if it wasn't optimal. And there was no embarrassed marketing director emailing me afterwards. That was also bad. I appreciate embarrassed marketing directors emailing me. So I got the first byte and then I need to read the rest of the sub-ACK. So in this case then it'll read This is also a bit naive, because this is also not properly done, but one step at a time. Oh right, I didn't create the new state. The sub-act remainder is in that state. And of course, oops. This will, if I did wrong here, it'll show immediately, because now I'll rerun my original tests and just make sure that the original stuff works, and I'm pretty sure it won't, because I'm totally convinced that this wasn't a complete fix yet. So I can rerun 1190. And that worked. I am a bit surprised. This is not my ordinary way of fixing things, is to break everything completely for a while and then be confused and scratch my head and then go back and understand how stupid I was. But okay. The original test cases work. Woohoo! So I didn't actually break them completely, even though I've modified the code quite a bit. So what about the new test case? Ta-da! Still says so. Okay, yeah, but that was not a surprise, right? Sort of a surprise. It shouldn't say that. Just to rebuild everything in the test server again. So let's fire off a debugger on the case. So I'm running the test case, stopping at that point, layout. Now you see, I'm very good at using this fancy GDB thing now. I'm reading 1 byte, I get it, and get the packet, and it's, let me see, do you like that, right? Oh, look at that GDB wizardry. Yeah, maybe I should apply for the affiliate thing. Yeah, I could do that. And it's not a... Wait a minute. What was that? It's a publish. Oh, yeah, right. That was expected, right? It should have been a publish. Should be published before. And then reading the rest of the publish and everything, and it should be fine. And then it should go back to the original state. And where am I? And I put another breakpoint at 538. And I'll just let it, everything got screwed up. And now we're in MQTT state, in the sub-act state. Yeah, that seems correct. Get into the function, read a byte. It didn't. I think maybe the code is not doing it correctly here. Let's see. No. No, 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 this is not right. Trace 1190. Should just remove the other trace file so that I don't have to complete as much. Gone. Now, okay, reload that from disk. I'm getting, okay, here's the publish, receiving 20 bytes. And what did the server think it sent? That's the publish. This is wrong because that's the sub ACK and that's the disconnect. We read too much data here. Yep. Yep. I guess this is the reason why I should use a library for this, so that I don't have to figure all these things out myself. Remaining length 37 bytes. Is wrong. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it is hard to right. Looking at symptoms, thinking on how you visualize the code and how you think it should, or what it does, and then actually that isn't actually always the case. You actually wrote the code, so maybe sometimes that's a disconnect, and sometimes there are a lot of different subtle things when reading code and trying to do. But okay, here is definitely, so I read the first byte there. This is somehow wrong. Let's start over and verify the, yeah, I got a lot of memory warnings there just because I quit curl before it freed everything. I'm going to do put a breakpoint there on the remaining length call here. My Emacs config is not that big. Well, I don't know, 150 lines. It's not, I don't use that many custom things. And it's ancient, so I bet a bunch of these things I have in my Emacs file are just sort of legacy things I did a long time ago that I could just as well just remove, or the default anyway, or and stuff like that. So I think what's most fancy in my setup is that I'm actually loading this file automatically this is the curl Emacs list file. So it actually loads this file automatically when I load files from the Emacs from the curl directory, so that I get curl style on my stuff. Yeah, Emacs is Lisp, so the config file is Lisp as well. So I guess, you know, I get sort of coloring for all the variable names or variable types that I use in curl. So if I, for example, use if I load a curl public header, for example, I get you know, I can get like this. I can get green colors for, or colored for all the different types I have in curl and stuff like that without well, the layout engine knows different variable types so that you can highlight them properly. I don't even know what Ivy or Helm are, so no, I have not used them. I'm an Emacs user since a long time. I started using Emacs in 1991. Well, around that time at least, when I started learning Unix. And no, Vim didn't even exist back then. Then VI existed, but you know, using VI, it's never been a choice for me. Well, I can use it. I can exit it at least. So the decode length thing, packet 1. Something is wrong. It only read one. Did I remove the other one? Yeah. But on the other hand, I have to confess that I basically never exit Emacs, since I basically never shut down my computer, and all I do on my computer is curl, to be honest. Not all, but pretty much around the clock. So it's the first thing I do in the morning, the last thing I do in the evening, I do curl stuff. So I have my Emacs is alive all the time, pretty much around the clock, every day, all year, since a very long time back. So I don't ever exit it. I do it sometimes by accident or when I reboot or something, but yeah. Yeah, I was part of Horizon on the Commodore 64 back in the late 80s, early 90s. I used the same nickname back then. I was bagged there already on the Commodore 64. If you want to see some fancy screenshots from what we did on the Commodore 64, my friend Shell has demo. That's the Horizon team picture, blurry one, really looking really dorky from back in the day, and we have all the demos listed on this page. It's very zoomed in, and they're actually available for download. So if you want to download our old Commodore 64 demos, you have to run them in a simulator, which I have to admit I have never done. If you want to find some YouTube things, there are actually some Horizon Commodore 64 demo, so you can actually find a few of our more later versions, later demos on 64 on YouTube. so that we just recorded, I think recorded mostly with simulators. So yeah, that was my beginning of computers and development. I started on Commodore 64 in 1985 actually. So I figured out BASIC, and then I learned that BASIC is not fun if you want to do games and demos, and I wanted to do that, so I learned, well, assembly on the 6502 in the Commodore 64. And then we did demos, and I did a few games too on the Commodore 64 in the late 80s, early 90s. That's how I got into computers in the first place. What did I break here? I removed some code and I... Hi, cool that you like curl. I appreciate that. And now I broke something, but how did I do that? Right, you can actually sort of have an Emacs server and then start out Emacs clients to use the Emacs server. If you want to do that, I just don't see the point in doing that for my own personal use cases. I think this looks really broken. I can't really understand how this works at all. Just reads 1 byte. Where's the rest of it? Oh, the decode length reads... No, it doesn't. It should. Because we don't know how much to read until we have... So the MQTT packet header has a variable length field there, which is highly annoying. Because then I need to read the header byte by byte and see if the highest bit is set. I need to read the next byte and decode that as part of the length. So yeah, then I needed that to be a state machine as well. Yeah, back in the old days, I imagine when memory was more scarce and you had a different kind of life, I would imagine a lot of those things made more sense. Nowadays, first I don't ever shut Emacs down, and if I need separate Emacs, why not just fire up a separate one? It's not a... Back in the day, Emacs was also a memory hog, 20 years ago, that was a constant joke. These days, I would imagine that Emacs is one of the smaller editors you can use. Now, since the modern style of doing editors is putting them all as a browser, so you get gigabytes of data just to run your text editor. The old joke Emacs as 8 megabytes and constantly swapping is kind of an irony now, since 8 megabytes, sure, everything is 8 megabytes or more these days. Right, if it takes a while to read the config, I imagine then you have a different sort of incitament to use other ways to invoke it. Yeah, if the startup time is brutal, then you... But in my case, my startup time is like within, I don't know, fractions of a second. I don't know. I haven't measured. And as I said, I don't really shut it down often, so it doesn't matter too much for me. Now I'm lost in this thing here. I'm thinking about going back in my tracks and redoing this in a different way. I am, because now I'm thinking I think I need to go back and I'm going to do a generic header parser for MQTT. So I'm going to read the first byte and the remaining length fields in the state machine, so that I get that separately from the actual instruction handling, like this. Oops. Not that. I wanted to do this. Like that. Well, as it comes to designing protocols, I think that's really hard to say generically what's good and bad when it comes to designing protocols. First, all protocols have their own different use cases, and they're also designed, as Murnock asked here, they're also designed in different times. So a lot of the protocols, they have their own conditions and conditions applied because of when they were designed or for what purpose they were designed. So I think that's why we're also going to see more protocols coming over time and sort of in different conditions, just because we all changed. Internet changes, and the different conditions are sort of unique for different things. So I think it's really hard to say what's good and bad in general for protocols. These days, of course, security is more important than ever before in protocol land, and we've also, I would say that a generic thing that we do with protocols these days that we didn't do back in a long time ago is that we nowadays are very strict. This Postel's approach that we should be liberal in what we accept and conservative in what we send has caused us so much pain, so we shouldn't ever be liberal in what we accept in protocols. We should be very, very strict in what we accept, and basically shut down immediately if we get things that aren't within the protocol spec. Never be liberal, always be strict, and stuff like that. So there are a few things I think that are best practices, but in general it's really hard. I wouldn't dare to say these are best practices and this is the way we should do things going forward. I'm more of a pragmatic than that. And I'm sure also that some of the things that we think are good today will be challenged and maybe change in the future anyway. Back to my state machine. My state machine is going to get more complicated. So I'm going to read the first byte like this. Bam. Cut it out from there, and I'm going to put it here because this is going to read the first initial byte. Like that. And where do I store it? I think we store it there. We have a first byte. Yep. We already stored it. First byte. There it is. So I needed a proper state machine so that we can handle partial reads and the blocking reads, so that in case we can't read anymore, we get an E again back and we return back to the main loop. So I need to make this properly able of doing just a partial read and then go back and come back again later when we have to. So first we read this byte. And it can just as well could just as well do it like this. Bump to put it into the proper place at once. Remember the first byte. And after that, when we have the first byte, we switch state to read the remaining length. As you can see, I'm very fond of my tab completion thing in Emacs. So if I type MQTT and I type R and I press my completion combo, it'll iterate through the different variables with that same prefix. Saves me from typing and doing typos. So switch to remaining length. In this case, we can also do fall through. And if you haven't noticed, the modern compilers will complain unless I spell it exactly like this. As an explicit fall through in the switch here, otherwise it'll think I did it by mistake. Which I think is interesting. I suppose that's more of a sign that C should have had that as a keyword from the start. Okay. Remaining length. Now here's the key, right? We need to decode length. That's a function we have to decode the length. Yep. So I need to read 1 byte at a time. If the highest bit is set, I need to read another byte within this same state. So I'm going to use that packet style of remembering how many bytes we have. So in the first, when we have the first byte, I'm going to zero this packet count. It's not a packet, it's a byte counter for where we store the data. So we store it, trying to find some. So we get 1 byte here, and if this byte has the highest bit set, we And this works as long as we can read 1 byte at a time. As it is set. This is going to get all crazy if we get many bytes like this. So we will need a condition on the byte. While byte has the highest bit set and the packet counter is less than 4, then we loop. Okay, so then we stay. It'll return E again if we need to wait, and that'll be fine. Otherwise, we will get everything in this state. We will decode the length, MQTT decode length, and it'll be in packet 0, and it'll be this many bytes. We don't need to know how many bytes is spent because we know how many bytes is spent. All the bytes we gave it, because otherwise we wouldn't have those bytes. It's okay. We decode this is the remaining length. I'm spelling out in full name here. It's not really what I'm usually doing, but let's do that. Calling it remaining length because that's what it's called in the protocol. Okay, now I sort of broke everything, so I need to get back to some sort of good state again. But now I've introduced 2 more states. And I will start out in the first state. Maybe I need 2 layers of state. Or 2 states, basically. Because what to expect. So after it has read the remaining length, it should sort of move to the next state. If MQ remaining, some of the packages, they don't have any remaining length, and then it's end. Like this, I'm going to do like this. Then I'm going back to first. If there's no remaining length, we did everything and we're going back to the first state. But if there is a remaining length, we're actually going to have to get message. What do they call it in the... Oops, I had it in the wrong browser. I'll move it over. There it is. Oh, did I typo? I did. Did it already in the somewhere else. Thank you. So this is the generic MQTT. They have a, here it is, the fixed header. They have a variable header and then a payload. So after having read the remaining length is part of the fixed header. After that, there's a variable header. I'm doing a little shortcut right now, so I'm going to put it to a variable state. So if there's more data, depending on where we are, we're going to so basically the next state will then be the state to switch to when we have gotten the So this is where to go after remaining length is done. Can never really get that enum thing right on my first attempt. Alright, back to that compiler, but that's fine. I'll save that for now. Back to next state. So if there's more data to read, it'll switch to next state, which would say conAC from the beginning, so we know that know what to do from the beginning. My obs is acting up, but I know that it did that before without it was really notable on the stream. So let's hope it works fine for you. So next stream, it will go to conAC, and conAC now it has 2 bytes of data left. Okay, now I need to fix the compiler error so that I can start repairing everything again. Result is used uninitialized. It's not that, it's called first. Ooh, let's call it, let's do like this. Packet is first byte, and we end off the correct things. Not like that, like that. Like that. First byte. Use of undeclared identifier. just scrambling around, fixing my compiler errors, sockfd, using that in more places now. Not sure that is wise, but let's do that for now. So I'm copying variable declarations from other functions to make sure that I get them correct or the same thing. Right, so I'm just fixing my compiler errors that I have right now. And basically, since I've moved around all the code, I moved variable names into new functions that I didn't have them declared and stuff like that. So So I'm sure that I have messed up here in a few places. I'm just I'm gonna make sure that it builds, and so that I can start running my test cases again. And then when I can do that, I'm going to start repairing my logic, because I'm sure that I didn't really, it's not complete. What I did now was primarily split out so that I read the first byte in a separate state and the remaining length field in one state, and after I read the remaining length I switched to the state I had previously. So I'm going to do so the code is going to read that first MQTT fixed header stuff in a separate state, or separate states really. So now I'm going to watch the tests break completely. So 11, start out with a simple case, 1190. Broken. So we get a 20 back, which is the big. Here, receive header. What's the 20? That is the sub, the con-ac, yes, 20. And I don't output, I should do like this. Just to make sure that I get the proper debug. It still fails, but now the trace should be better. So I see 2200. And then I do send header. Which looks fine. So there is incoming subscribe, that's correct. And that's then the sub ACK, but that's broken, then it's okay. Just for a little debugging here for now, let's output the state number. So what did we? We did send a incoming subscribe. That means that we did a subscribe. But sub ACK broke. I'm not surprised. Didn't really adapt that one. Oops. Try again. Oops. Okay. State 3. Okay. I'm going to take off and refill my coffee, and then I'm going to restart my OBS because it had completely messed up. But I'll be back. Give me a minute. I'll run on a coffee break, then restart my OBS, and the stream will be back again. Hang on.